The blizzard on Karsith had teeth. Queen Pixara of the Draconic Houses felt each frozen fang sink through her emerald scales as she sat against the crumpled hull of her royal transport, the Sovereign's Pride. The ship's emergency beacon had stopped blinking 17 minutes ago. The distress signal had ceased transmitting 23 minutes before that. Now there was only the howling white nothing of a Karsithian storm, and the increasingly certain knowledge that she, Pixara the Unconquered, first daughter of the Seven Flames, bearer of the ancient wings, was going to freeze to death in the middle of absolutely nowhere. She pulled her great scaled wings tighter around her shoulders, watching the snow accumulate on the dark green membrane that stretched between their elegant bones. Her long golden hair had frozen into crystalline strands that clinked together when she moved. The elegant silver circlet upon her brow now felt like a band of ice pressing into her skull. "Magnificent," she muttered through chattering teeth. "Absolutely magnificent way to end a dynasty." Her pilot was dead, killed in the crash when the navigational system had failed during the storm. Her guards had ventured out to find help 2 hours ago and had not returned. Her communicator had shattered against the instrument panel during impact, and somewhere out there, beyond this frozen wasteland, her entire empire waited for her return to ratify the peace treaty that would end 3 centuries of interstellar war. The war would continue. Her people would die, all because she had insisted on taking the scenic route through the outer reaches. "Pride," she whispered. "Always pride." That was when she saw him. A small figure emerged from the white curtain of snow, trudging through drifts that reached nearly to his waist. He was human. She could tell by the rounded ears and the soft pink skin of his face, the only part of him not covered by mismatched pieces of salvaged armor and insulated fabric. He had blonde hair that stuck out in wild tufts from beneath a helmet 2 sizes too large, and his breath plumed in rapid clouds that spoke of exertion and excitement rather than fear. He was a child, perhaps 10 years old by human reckoning, and he was smiling. Pixara's reptilian eyes narrowed as she watched him approach. In her experience, nothing that smiled during a blizzard could be trusted. Smiles in storms meant either madness or profit motive, and she had lived long enough to know which was more common. The boy stopped 5 meters from the wreckage, his head tilted to one side as he surveyed the damage with an expression of exaggerated expertise. He scratched his chin thoughtfully, nodded to himself several times, and then walked a slow circle around the ship's exposed engine compartment, making small humming noises of assessment. "Well," he said finally, his voice carrying easily despite the wind, "there's your problem right there." He pointed at a section of the hull that had been completely sheared away, exposing a tangle of molten wiring and shattered components. Pixara stared at him. "The entire propulsion system has been destroyed." "Exactly." The boy nodded sagely. "That's definitely going to need some work." "Some work," Pixara repeated flatly. "Fortunately for you, Mom, my late father taught me how to fix things." The boy puffed out his chest and tapped the chest plate of his armor with obvious pride. "Vingas Dallas was the finest mechanic in the outer reaches. Passed down all his secrets to me before he died. Very tragic, his death. Very tragic indeed." He paused dramatically, allowing time for condolences that did not come. "I'm Corbin Dallas," he continued, apparently undeterred by her silence. "Master salvager and repair specialist. At your service." Pixara studied him for a long moment. The armor he wore bore the marks of a dozen different ships. A pauldron from a Terran freightliner here, a knee guard from a Balaxian scoutcraft there, all of it held together with thermal tape and what appeared to be optimism. His boots didn't match. His gloves had holes in 3 fingers, and the toolkit slung across his back was clearly just a satchel stuffed with random debris. "You are a con artist," she said. Corbin's smile didn't waver. I prefer creative entrepreneur. You intend to rob me. Rob is such a harsh word. He spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. I was thinking more along the lines of accept generous compensation for essential services rendered in a time of crisis. Despite herself, despite the cold that was slowly killing her and the despair that had been crushing her spirit, Pixara felt the corner of her mouth twitch upward. This child had walked through a deadly blizzard, found a stranded alien queen, and his immediate instinct had been to attempt to swindle. There was something almost admirable about that level of audacity. Your father, she said, the late Vingas Dallas. Very late, tragically late. How did he die? Corbin's expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, calculation, something that might have been genuine sadness, and finally, a sort of resigned theatricality. Bravely, he said. He died bravely, fighting off raiders to protect a shipment of orphan supplies. Orphan supplies. Medicine, food, blankets. Very touching story, really. Brings a tear to the eye just thinking about it. He dabbed at his eye with a frozen glove. The point is, he taught me everything he knew before his heroic end, and right now I'm the best chance you've got of surviving this storm. Pixara considered her options. They were, she had to admit, extremely limited. She could stay here and freeze. She could venture into the blizzard alone and freeze faster. Or she could follow this obvious little trickster and see where his scheme led. At worst, she would freeze slightly later. Your father's workshop, she said. It has heat, the warmest spot in the outer reaches. Corbin beamed. Also the safest. Very important, safe, considering there are some rough characters out here who might be interested in a fancy lady like yourself. As if summoned by his words, the sound of engines cut through the storm. Not the clean hum of civilian craft, but the aggressive growl of military-grade assault vehicles. Corbin's smile vanished. That would be them. Them? Mercenaries. They've been tracking your ship since you entered the sector. The boy was already moving, grabbing her scaled hand with surprising strength. We need to go. Now. How do you know about questions later, running now? Pixara found herself pulled to her feet, her frozen joints screaming in protest. The boy moved through the snow with practiced efficiency, leading her away from the wreck just as dark shapes began to descend through the blizzard. Your Royal Highness, an amplified voice boomed from above. Surrender peacefully and no harm will come to you. Resist, and we cannot guarantee your safety. They're lying, Corbin said without looking back. They'll sell you to the highest bidder either way. You seem very well informed for a simple salvager. I'm a very informed salvager. He yanked her to the left as a bolt of plasma sizzled through the air where she had been standing. Also, a very fast one. Try to keep up. They ran. The workshop turned out to be a converted cargo hauler half buried in the ice at the base of a frozen cliff. It was held together by determination, thermal adhesive, and what Pixara suspected was a significant amount of prayer. Lights glowed warmly through frost-covered windows, and smoke curled from a crooked chimney that had clearly been installed by someone with more enthusiasm than engineering skill. Corbin practically dragged her through the hatch, slamming it shut behind them, and engaging a series of locks that seemed far more sophisticated than the rest of the dwelling. Dad, he shouted, we've got company. Pixara's hearts, all three of them, stopped. Dad, she repeated. The man who emerged from the back of the shelter was tall, broad-shouldered, and almost offensively handsome in a weathered, roguish sort of way. He had the same blonde hair as his son, though his was longer and swept back from a face that bore the marks of a hard life, lived with apparent good humor. His eyes were the blue-gray of Carcithian ice, and they widened with surprise and alarm as they took in the scene before him. Corbin, he said slowly, why is there a draconic queen in our living room? Her ship crashed. And you brought her here? Mercenaries were going to kidnap her. So you kidnapped her first? I prefer preemptively relocated. Pixara stepped forward, her golden eyes blazing with a cold fury that had nothing to do with the temperature outside. You told me your father was dead. Corbin had the decency to look slightly ashamed. I said he was late. He is late. He's late for everything. It's a very tragic character flaw. I apologize for my son. The man stepped forward, and despite her anger, Pixara found herself noting the easy confidence of his movement, the way he seemed to fill the space without appearing threatening. I'm Vingas Dallas, the very much alive Vingas Dallas, I gathered. And you are Queen Pixara of the Draconic Houses. It wasn't a question. Your face has been on every bounty board from here to the core worlds for the past 3 weeks. I'm aware of my notoriety. Then you're also aware that having you here puts us in considerable danger. His eyes met hers, and there was no deference in them, no awe, no fear, no reverence, just the calculating assessment of a man who was used to weighing risks and rewards. The bounty on your head could buy a small planet. Are you considering claiming it? I'm considering my options. They stared at each other. The air between them seemed to crackle with something that had nothing to do with static electricity, though Pixara would have denied it under torture. She was a queen. He was a scavenger, a charming scavenger, certainly, with those ridiculous cheekbones and that infuriating half-smile, but a scavenger nonetheless. The bounty, she said carefully, was posted by the hegemony faction that opposes the peace treaty. If I am not returned to my throne within 7 days, the treaty fails. If the treaty fails, the war continues. If the war continues, millions more will die on both sides. Not my war. Not yet. She tilted her head, studying him. But the hegemony has already begun expanding into the outer reaches. How long before they decide your little frozen wasteland would make a convenient military outpost? Vingas's expression flickered. You're well informed for someone who just crashed in a blizzard. I am a queen. Information is my trade. And mine is survival. He gestured around the shelter. This isn't much, but it's ours. I won't risk it or my son for someone else's political games. So you will throw me to the mercenaries. I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? Corbin, who had been watching this exchange with the fascination of a spectator at a particularly intense sports match, chose this moment to interject. You know, if you two are going to keep staring at each other like that, you might as well just kiss and get it over with. The silence that followed was absolute. What? Vingas said through gritted teeth. Did you just say? I'm just saying the tension is very obvious. I'm 10, not stupid. Pixara felt heat rise to her scaled cheeks, an involuntary biological response that she absolutely refused to acknowledge. There is no tension. So much tension, Corbin continued cheerfully, like palpable. You could cut it with a plasma knife. Corbin, Vingas's voice had taken on a dangerous quality. I'm going to my room. The boy was already backing away, his hands raised in surrender. Leaving you two alone to talk, or whatever adults do when they're pretending they don't like each other. He vanished through a hatch, and they heard his laughter echoing down the corridor. Vingas closed his eyes. I'm sorry. His mother died when he was born. I've had to raise him alone, and clearly I failed in several key areas of social etiquette. His mother, Pixara paused, something softening in her expression despite herself. I am sorry for your loss. It was 10 years ago. His voice was carefully neutral. We've learned to manage by becoming con artists and salvagers, by surviving. He met her eyes again, and there was no shame in his gaze. Out here, you do what you have to. The universe doesn't hand out charity to those who need it most. Sometimes you have to take what you can get, even if it means lying, stealing, even if. He shrugged. "You can judge me if you want, Your Majesty, but I've kept my son alive, clothed and fed for 10 years in one of the harshest environments in known space. That's more than a lot of honest people can say." Pixara considered this. In the draconic houses, honor was everything. Reputation, duty, the sacred bonds of loyalty that held society together. She had been raised to despise those who operated outside these principles, to see them as lesser beings unworthy of respect. But she had also been raised in palaces, surrounded by servants who anticipated her every need. She had never known hunger, never known cold, never known the desperate arithmetic of survival that this man clearly calculated every single day. "I am not judging," she said finally. "I am reconsidering my assumptions." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or grudging respect. That's surprisingly open-minded for royalty. "I am full of surprises." Apparently. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture that made him look almost boyish. "Look, I can't promise anything, but I can at least get you warm and fed while we figure out what to do next. The mercenaries won't find us here. This place doesn't show up on any official maps. We've got some time." "How much time?" "Enough." He gestured toward the back of the shelter. "Come on, I'll make some tea, and you can tell me exactly how a draconic queen ended up crashing on my doorstep." 3 days passed, 3 days of close quarters, shared meals, and arguments that grew increasingly heated about increasingly trivial subjects. 3 days of Pixara learning that Vingas Dallas snored like a malfunctioning engine, left his tools everywhere, and had the most infuriating habit of being right about things she didn't want him to be right about. 3 days of Vingas learning that Queen Pixara could not cook, could not clean, could not perform any basic domestic task without making it seem like a royal decree, and had the most infuriating habit of being beautiful, even when she was covered in engine grease and swearing in high draconic. Not that he noticed. Much. "You're doing it wrong," he said for the 15th time, watching her attempt to repair a damaged communications relay. "I am doing it the way I was taught. You were taught wrong. I was taught by the finest engineers in the Draconic Fleet. Then the Draconic Fleet has terrible engineers." He reached past her to adjust the component she was working on, and their hands brushed. They both froze. "I would appreciate it," Pixara said with dangerous precision, "if you would not touch me without permission." "I was touching the relay. You were touching my hand while reaching for the relay. Your hand was in the way. My hand was exactly where it needed to be." From across the room, Corbin made a sound that might have been a cough and might have been barely suppressed laughter. "Should I give you two a moment? Or maybe a room? We have that spare storage compartment." "Corbin!" they shouted in perfect unison. The boy grinned and returned to his datapad, humming a tune that sounded suspiciously like a wedding march. Vingas stepped back, his jaw tight. "The mercenaries are still out there. Their search pattern has been getting closer. We need to move soon." "Move where?" Pixara turned to face him fully. "We cannot reach my fleet without a functional long-range transmitter, and we cannot build one without parts we do not have. There's a settlement about 40 kilometers east, Frost Haven, black market trading post. Not the nicest place, but they'll have what we need." "A black market?" Her tone dripped with distaste. How appropriate. "Beggars can't be choosers, Your Majesty, unless you'd prefer to wait here until the mercenaries find us." "I would prefer," she said icily, "to not be lectured on survival by a man who thinks grease stains are acceptable attire. And I would prefer to not have my hospitality questioned by a queen who can't even make toast without setting off the fire suppression system." That was one time. It was 3 times in 2 days. The heating element was obviously defective. The shelter shook. Dust fell from the ceiling, and warning lights began flashing red. "Proximity alert," Vingas said, all argument forgotten. "They found us." He was moving before the words finished leaving his mouth, grabbing weapons from hidden compartments, tossing gear to Corbin with the ease of long practice. The boy caught everything without hesitation, his earlier playfulness replaced by focused determination. "How?" Pixara demanded. "You said this location was hidden." "It was, which means someone sold us out." Vingas's expression was grim. "Doesn't matter now. We run." "Your Majesty!" A familiar, amplified voice echoed from outside. "We know you're in there. Come out peacefully, and the civilians will not be harmed." Pixara looked at Vingas, at Corbin, at the home they had built from nothing, the life they had carved out of ice and determination. "I should surrender," she said quietly. "No." Vingas's voice was hard. "We're not handing you over to anyone. They will destroy this place. They'll destroy it anyway, whether you surrender or not. People like that don't leave witnesses." He finished loading his weapons and met her eyes. "We fight, we run, we survive. That's how it works out here." "I have never—" She stopped, struggling with unfamiliar words. "I have never had anyone fight for me before, not like this." "Then you've been hanging around the wrong people." The shelter shook again, harder this time. Sections of the wall began to glow with heat. "Time to go," Vingas said. "Corbin, take the Queen through the emergency tunnel. Head for the ravine. There's an old mining shaft that will lead you toward Frost Haven." "What about you?" Pixara asked. "I'll draw them off, buy you time." "That's suicide. That's the job." He smiled, that infuriating half-smile that she had come to hate, or something very close to hate. "Don't worry, Your Majesty. I'm very hard to kill." "Dad," Corbin started. "Go." The word was gentle but final. "Take care of her, son, and take care of yourself." Corbin hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. He grabbed Pixara's hand and pulled her toward a hidden hatch she hadn't noticed before. "Wait," Pixara said, her voice strange even to her own ears. "Vingas, yeah?" 1,000 things crowded her throat. Gratitude, respect, something else she didn't have a name for. "Don't die," was all she managed, wasn't planning on it. He winked. "Now go. I've got some mercenaries to annoy." The next 26 hours blurred together in a haze of running, hiding, and desperate whispered conversations. Corbin proved himself an excellent guide through the frozen wilderness, finding paths and shelters that Pixara would never have discovered on her own. He was brave and resourceful and only occasionally inappropriate. "Do you think Dad made it?" he asked on the second night, as they huddled in an abandoned supply depot, waiting for the storm to pass. "He seemed very capable. He is. He's the best." The boy's voice was fierce with conviction. "He taught me everything. Not just fixing things, although he's amazing at that, but how to survive, how to read people, how to know when to run and when to fight, and how to lie." Corbin was quiet for a moment. "Yeah, that too." He looked up at her, and in the dim light his eyes seemed much older than 10. "I'm sorry I lied to you about him being dead. I just thought, if you felt sorry for me, you'd be easier to trick." It was a clever strategy. Dad says lying is a tool, like anything else. It can build or destroy, depending on how you use it. He paused. But he also says the best lies are the ones you never have to tell, the ones you avoid by being clever enough to find another way. "Your father sounds like a complicated man." "He's the best man I know." Another pause. "He's going to be okay. He has to be." Pixara reached out and placed her scaled hand on the boy's shoulder. It was an awkward gesture. She had little experience with physical comfort, but it seemed to help. "He will be. Men like your father do not die easily." You like him? I respect his abilities. No, you like him, I can tell. Corbin's grin returned, a flash of mischief in the darkness. It's okay, he likes you too. He's just terrible at showing it. I am a queen. He is a good person, a brave person, someone who would die to protect people he just met. The boy shrugged. Seems like the kind of person a queen should like. Before she could respond, her communicator, the backup one Vingas had given her, crackled to life. Your Majesty. The voice was unfamiliar, cold, professional. This is Commander Cruz of the Hegemony Recovery Division. We have something that belongs to you. A second voice came through, ragged, pained, but unmistakably Vingas. Don't listen to them, Pixara. Whatever they offer, don't. The transmission cut off with a sharp crack that could only have been a blow. As you can hear, Commander Cruz continued smoothly, we have acquired your associate. His continued well-being depends entirely on your cooperation. Pixara's claws dug into her palms. Beside her, Corbin had gone very still, his face pale. What do you want? She asked. Surrender yourself at the coordinates I'm transmitting. Come alone. Your fleet can retrieve you from there. We have no intention of keeping you permanently. We merely require a delay. A few weeks, nothing more. By the time you return to your throne, certain political realities will have shifted. The peace treaty will fail. The peace treaty is a fantasy. War is the natural state of the universe. We're simply ensuring it continues as it should. Pixara looked at Corbin. The boy was shaking now, tears streaming down his face, but his jaw was set with determination. Don't do it, he whispered. Dad wouldn't want you to. He'd want you to save your people. And what about you? What would you want? I want my dad back. His voice cracked. But not. Not if it means more people dying. Not if it means the war keeps going. He wiped his eyes fiercely. Dad always said the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, even when the few is us. In that moment, Pixara understood something she had never truly grasped before. Sacrifice was not a word carved in stone or spoken in solemn ceremonies. It was a 10-year-old boy telling her to let his father die so that strangers could live. It was the hardest lesson she had ever learned. Commander Cruz, she said into the communicator, I accept your terms. Excellent. The coordinates are, but I will require proof that Mr. Dallas will be released unharmed after I surrender. That can be arranged, and his son must be allowed to leave with him. A pause. The boy is of no consequence to us. He may go. Then we have an agreement. She ended the transmission and looked at Corbin. I need you to contact my fleet. Use the emergency frequency, 97 Alpha Delta. Tell them where I will be. Tell them to come with everything they have. But you said you'd surrender. I said I would accept their terms. A slow smile spread across her scaled features. Predatory, dangerous, every inch, a queen. I said nothing about honoring them. The exchange happened at dawn. Pixara walked alone across the frozen plain, her wings folded tight against her back, her head held high. The mercenary camp spread before her, a dozen ships, 200 armed soldiers, enough firepower to level a small moon. Commander Cruz waited at the center, a thin man with dead eyes and a smile that never reached them. Beside him, bound and bloodied but standing on his own 2 feet, was Vingas Dallas. Their eyes met across the distance. She saw anger there, anger at her for surrendering, for putting herself at risk. But she also saw something else, something that made her hearts ache in ways she had never experienced before. Your Majesty. Cruz inclined his head in mock respect. So glad you could join us. Release him. In due time. First, I need to confirm that you came alone. He gestured, and scanners swept the surrounding area. No fleet, no soldiers, no tricks. Very good. I honored our agreement. Of course you did. You're a queen. Honor is all you have. He waved a hand and 2 guards cut Vingas's bonds. He's free to go, and you, your majesty, are free to stay. Vingas stumbled forward, catching himself before he fell. His eyes never left Pixara's face. You shouldn't have done this. I had no choice. There's always a choice. Yes, she smiled. A real smile, warm and sad and full of something that felt terrifyingly like hope. And I made mine. That was when the sky opened up. The draconic fleet emerged from hyperspace with a thunder that shook the ground itself. 50 warships, each one bristling with weapons, each one screaming royal vengeance across every frequency. The mercenary camp dissolved into chaos as soldiers scrambled for defensive positions that had suddenly become death traps. "You lied!" Cruz screamed. "I was taught by the best." Pixara spread her wings wide as a transport beam locked onto her position. "Perhaps you should choose your enemies more carefully, Commander." Yet the last thing she saw before the light took her was Vingas's face, stunned, proud, and laughing. The peace treaty was signed 3 days later. Queen Pixara presided over the ceremony with all the dignity and grace her station demanded, but her mind was elsewhere. Specifically, it was 40,000 light-years away, on a frozen world, where a charming scoundrel and his impossible son were probably getting into trouble without her. She had offered Vingas a position in her court, head of security, chief engineer, any title he wanted, any role he wished to play. He had refused. "I don't belong in palaces," he'd said during their last conversation, the secure channel crackling with interference. "And Corbin needs space to grow, real space, not the kind you find between marble walls. You could have that space here, both of you. Could we?" His smile had been gentle, but knowing. A scavenger's son learning to bow and scrape, a con artist pretending to be respectable. We both know how that story ends. It does not have to end at all. Everything ends, Your Majesty. The question is whether you let it end well. A pause. Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on the outer reaches. Make sure nobody else crashes into our little corner of nowhere. You are making a mistake. Probably. I'm good at those. Another pause. Longer this time. But Pixara. What we had out there, in that freezing shelter, fighting for our lives, that was real. That matters. And it'll still matter, even if we never see each other again. She had wanted to argue, wanted to demand, wanted to use every ounce of royal authority she possessed to make him change his mind. Instead, she had simply said, "Take care of your son." Always. His voice had been rough with something neither of them would name. "Take care of your empire." Always. The transmission had ended, and with it, something Pixara hadn't even known she possessed. 2 years passed. The peace held. The draconic houses flourished under Pixara's reformed leadership, and the outer reaches slowly began to transform from a lawless wasteland into something approaching civilization. Trade routes opened, settlements grew. Hope, that most fragile of commodities, began to take root in frozen soil. On a morning like any other, Corbin Dallas, now 12 and several inches taller, received an encrypted message on his personal datapad. It bore no sender identification, no return coordinates, nothing but 3 lines of text. "The sovereign's pride has been restored. She awaits her escort. Some things break so they can be found again." Corbin read it twice. Then he ran to find his father. Vingas Dallas was in the workshop, the new one, twice the size of the old and actually up to code, elbow deep in the engine of a salvaged shuttle. Grease streaked his face and his hair had gone slightly gray at the temples, but his eyes were the same, sharp, knowing, and not quite as cynical as he pretended. "Dad." Corbin thrust the datapad at him. "Look." Vingas read the message. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, a loosening of tension that had been present for so long, Corbin had stopped noticing it. "Well," he said slowly, "that's interesting." "Interesting? That's all you're going to say?" "What do you want me to say?" "That we're going." Corbin was practically vibrating with excitement. "That you're going to see her again. That you're finally going to stop moping around and pretending you're fine, when anyone with eyes can see you miss her." "I don't mope." "You absolutely mope. You mope so hard, the neighbors ask me what's wrong with you." "We don't have neighbors." "We would if you hadn't scared them all away with your moping." Vingas stared at his son for a long moment. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. Not the wry half-smile of a cynic, but something warmer, something that looked almost like hope. "Get your things," he said, "and pack warm. I have a feeling we're going somewhere cold." "Yes!" Corbin pumped his fist in the air. "Finally! Do you think she'll remember me? Do you think she'll like how tall I've gotten? Do you think she'll—" "Corbin?" "Yeah, no inappropriate comments when we get there. Dad, I'm 12 now. I'm very mature." "Uh-huh. Totally mature. Extremely mature. I won't say a single thing about you two finally getting married." "Corbin!" The boy was already running, his laughter echoing through the workshop. And somewhere across the stars, a queen with emerald scales and golden hair smiled at nothing at all, and waited for the only ones who had ever made her feel found. What Corbin learned: that some lies come from love, the desperate kind that hopes to keep things close. What Vingas learned: that trust costs nothing but builds everything, and that letting someone in doesn't mean letting go. What Pixara learned: that true royalty isn't about crowns or commands, it's about choosing people over power and love over loneliness. And what they all discovered: that the best repairs aren't made on machines. They're made on hearts that learned, through breaking, how to let themselves be found. The end.